What's up everyone? Today we're going to talk about retro tracks, a topic that is hardly new here, but I've taken some time to reflect on what we've seen from Mario Kart World thus far, and I'm ready to gush about the hits, criticize the misses, and give my overall pre-direct grade. But before breaking it all down, it should be mentioned as a disclaimer that I'm not going to know how much I truly enjoy all these courses until I actually start playing the game. Trust me, I'm not one to rush to final judgment, so don't take it that way today. I mean, I still haven't released my top 96 MK8 Deluxe track list yet because I keep changing my mind, and time is seriously running short for that, but stay tuned for that, I guess. But typically with retro courses, you kind of have a basic understanding of what you're going to get. And based on my first impression, I would say that this retro selection as well, maybe a little slightly above average for me, which mind you, is not a bad thing. Mario Kart World has brought back my favorite new track from the two Mario Kart games I spent the most amount of time on growing up, so one might think that this retro selection is a home run for me. But well, it's a little more complicated than that. I would easily take this set of tracks over Mario Kart DS's retro selection, and I'm definitely leaning with it over Wii's as well. But when stacked up against Mario Kart 7 and even the base form of Mario Kart 8, it's not that I don't think it can compete per se, but I can't say I feel that this is a definitive upgrade. But of course, I hold both of those selections very highly, and the circumstances surrounding all of these games are slightly different as well. And it's hard to be critical in this instance because I'm just glad that they even brought back returning courses to begin with. It's a feature I've always appreciated in these games. I like seeing what makes the cut, confirming that I'll at least have a few tracks I'm guaranteed to be excited about, and seeing what tracks even get redeemed too. If there was ever a time to stray away from the formula though, it was now, but yet it appears that they are just a fundamental part of how every Mario Kart game works at this point. Also notably though, this is the first game in the series to be reusing retro tracks from the jump. And thank God it did, to be honest, because they brought back my favorite course in the series that's already been remade, that being Airship Fortress. So this was a great start for me. Airship's return brings up a bit of a funny topic for me. One pet peeve I've always had when watching other creators discuss these games is that almost never do they consider the holistic view of the series when saying what tracks should be in what game. And it's really easy to say that Airship Fortress should have been in the recent Booster Pass, for instance, over DS Mario Circuit. That is maybe the easiest stance possible to make. But I want to ask you all today, would you go back and make the trade now, knowing what you know now? Or do you like what happened even better? Because all I'll say is sometimes, we've just got to trust the process. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had plenty of great selections, and I enjoyed DS Mario Circuit for what it was, but Airship Fortress is much more important in a starting set of 32 tracks than it would have been in Wave 4 of the Booster Course Pass. They were never going to bring a ton of Mario Kart 8 retro tracks back to Mario Kart World, so I think we won in the end here. Now, it is worth considering. Did Nintendo hear the Airship Fortress noise? Should we continue to be louder as such? Well, it actually is possible. But what should also be considered is that Mario Kart World has a different premise than the last four games to begin with. When evaluating its track selection, we have to keep the world in mind, and again, it just makes sense to have an airship level in a Mario-themed world to begin with. Things like this will be considered in the rest of the video and in my future suggestions, so considering the fit and how much I love the course to begin with, Airship Fortress gets a massive thumbs up from me to start things off today. Now, one of my most controversial takes over the last few years, alongside DS Mario Circuit not being the problem with the Booster Pass, is that Toad Circuit was actually not the problem either. I said it was bound to return one day regardless, and that when looking at the series from the bird's eye view, it was not as problematic as a course like Mario Circuit 3, another blander circuit that had already returned in Mario Kart Wii. Now, I understand that when bringing back unpopular tracks, it presents an opportunity to redeem them, and Toad Circuit clearly did not live up to that challenge in Mario Kart 8, but many of you told me that we should axe it for something like Shy Guy Bazaar, another Mushroom Cup track from Mario Kart 7. Well, Nintendo resisted on this one too. Not to sound like a broken record, but a new game always changes the outlook so much, and we often overreact to everything in the moment because, well, it's fun. But there was a time where Cheep Cheep Beach fans were jealous of Koopa Troopa Beach fans too, until their course got to be part of the Mario Kart 8 era for a decade. Shy Guy Bazaar is another great addition in my opinion. It's not my favorite track ever, but it is returning for the first time on console, unique, and more than solid. And it too was more important to have in World's base roster than in the end game of Mario Kart 8 as well. It is also a fit in the desert part of the world, and I think that it fits that role superbly since while it is a desert track, that isn't really what it's defined by. That's a good thing for keeping the sense of variety in a game where cups are all defined by distinct themes. And in summary, I think it was worth it to not knock Toad Circuit out of the Booster Pass and leave this one for later. We did not kick the can down the road. We survived Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and we're about to feast for it. Now, I'm not implying that Toad Circuit would have certainly been here had it not been in Mario Kart 8, but it is no longer lingering in the background as some potential option to crash the party. So, with it not even part of the discussion now, are there other Toad-themed tracks that they might want to add? Alright, Toad's Factory. First time returning, super popular Wii course. My personal favorite from that game. Home run. There's really not much else to say about this one. It was a completely obvious selection and one of the courses that the rest of the selection should be built around at this point. It is the definition of a slam dunk and one of those selections that once again makes you consider if fan outcry really does make an impact. But again, if you brought back practically the entire Wii lineup already in the last game, you only have so many options left. It's not like bringing in Bowser's Castle or Mario Circuit made much sense either, given a Bowser and Peach's Castle already exist in this world. But that kind of brings me to another interesting point. In my first video after the Direct, I speculated that maybe we will see GBA Rainbow Road as a secret or something. I no longer believe this to be the case, and it's because, well, they removed the Retro Course console prefixes. There would be nothing to distinguish a new and retro Rainbow Road by name, and given this is a world, I understand it. This also limits many other tracks from appearing though. As mentioned, there's a Bowser's Castle already, and because Peach's Castle exists in the world already in Peach Stadium, this pretty much eliminates the idea of a traditional Mario Circuit track, and no, Mario Bros. Circuit does not count to me. I'm counting that as the Mario Kart Stadium of this game instead. But if this theoretically eliminates GCN, DS, Wii, 3DS, and Wii U's Mario Circuits, and we just had the GBA one in Mario Kart 8, what does it leave us with? Well, Mario Circuit 4, of course. Finally, they did it. It took so long, too. Wait, they did what now? Ooh, that's awkward. Well guys, apparently they're bringing back SNES Mario Circuit alright. All of them in one singular race. Except for... I can't say I'm too bummed out to be honest, but this was a crazy idea. And somehow it makes so much sense. Firstly, it fills that Mario Circuit need we just discussed, but also I felt a shift and it goes back to SNES Bowser Castle 3 back in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You see, I think that Nintendo knows that these SMK courses are dated. What they did do to BC3 was nothing short of incredible. But honestly, I don't think they could really pull it off for many of the other course designs from Super Mario Kart. It is hard to make something like Koopa Beach 1 into anything more than a pretty basic beach oval. So perhaps combining the tracks or even implementing them into the overworld is the route that they're choosing to go to prevent the staleness from showing. This way, perhaps the nostalgia can actually feel like nostalgia, where it feels better than it actually was growing up. I've seen little about what Koopa Troopa Beach is actually going to be like. If it is a combination of both SNES Koopa Beaches, I don't really hate it. If it's just KB1, then fine. It's one I've actually predicted to be in my Mario Kart 9 Shell Cup for ages, so it would be funny to see it come true even if it happened in perhaps an unexpected way. And if it's just KB2, well, I don't see it as the apocalypse per se. Really, it's just fine. I'm not the biggest fan ever of N64 Koopa Troopa Beach anyway, so I'm not devastated by the tease that we got, but I can't say I'm particularly excited either. But anyways, let's get back to the confirmed combined SNES tracks, the circuits. I've complained a lot about Mario Circuit 3 in the Mario Kart 8 era. This won't be the last time I do it in the coming months either. But if these guys at Nintendo are really going to subject me to it again, which by the way is all the more reason to say I was right about it being the true villain of the Booster Pass, then well, I actually am glad that they're combining it with MC1 and MC2 into some mega SNES Mario Circuit. It's a cool idea and I actually do enjoy me some MC2, so while I am not exactly excited about this addition to the main cast of courses, I at least understand the fit and appreciate that it's a new spin at least. But some of you might have noticed that there is another Mario Circuit I didn't mention, and I'm not here to hit you with the actually it's a raceway, because to me, Mario Raceway is just Mario Circuit 2, as in TOO, not MC2 from earlier, but I think there was never a chance that we saw Mario Raceway here to begin with. Since Mario Kart 8 came out, Nintendo has really taken pride in their music arrangements for Mario Kart, and they want every track in a game to have a unique song, I'm convinced, and in cases where they break this rule, I think the track to do it has to have some pretty insane aura. And I don't really think that Mario Raceway was going to have that aura and beat out the SNES circuit idea. Instead, we got the Final N64 track, which despite being a stadium, uses the circuit, or raceway, theme. It really is a reminder of how far we've come in some instances, because while varying music tracks has definitely become a priority in recent times, the older games reused themes literally all the time, and this is just an example of it. But everybody, give a warm welcome back to N64 Wario Stadium. Now, this selection is interesting to me. It was the single track that was the foundational piece of all my retro track predictions back in the day, because if you followed any precedent ever, it meant you were adding this track, the Final N64 Course to never be remade, and solving the puzzle from that starting point. It was never the most popular track in the series, but it was the building block. Of course, Nintendo has chosen to break that precedent in many ways. The majority of retro selections in this game were not courses that I've never seen a remake before. Committing to this track in spite of that, despite them really no longer having to, I guess kinda means something. Consider the fact that we just came off a decade of DS Wario Stadium, the better designed version, I would argue, in Mario Kart 8. Consider how much of a revamp was needed to really modernize the N64 version and make it less repetitive, while still not cheating its source material. I've wondered for a while now, especially in this new DLC era, if they would just look at this track and be like, you know, we pass. There were challenges and reasons to do so, but they didn't. And this kind of reaffirms to me that they don't give up on tracks. But you know what? I actually like what they did here. I know many are saying that they changed too much, but the track looks much more fun to play now. It doesn't look nearly as repetitive, and I would argue that all of the most important sections are still here. Despite the increased distance, almost so much so that it feels like they're still kind of afraid of the glitch from Mario Kart 64, the track still loops around and drives by its starting line on the way to the second half of the course just like how it always was. There's still ramps everywhere. There's still that big jump at the end, and it looks to me as if the last turn is actually designed for humans to drive now. It looks like, well, a good remake. But we aren't done with the Wario tracks though. And because Nintendo is really invested in my suffering, this of course means that I'm not talking about Wario Coliseum. It's kind of funny how quickly things change for the record. For generations, N64 Wario Stadium was the track that had seen the longest wait time before finally returning. But now it's here, and we live in a world where a new Mario Kart game feels like a once-in-a-decade thing. Double Dash came out 7 years after 64, but the craziest part of this all is they still have 4 tracks left to choose from Double Dash. It's possible that some of these courses will be waiting well over 30 years to come back. But today, I'm focused on evaluating the actual selection, and I can't be letting my personal biases get in the way of that. So let me say it clearly, Wario Shipyard looks great. Now, it's honestly a little bit weird to think about. Had they known that they were going to remove underwater driving after 8, it feels like they should have found a way to put this track in Mario Kart 8. But perhaps they found it to be perfectly suited to be a retro course that displays the new feature of just driving on the water and tricking off the waves. I've always liked the atmosphere of this track, and they really turned the vibe up a notch in this version too. And despite being a second Wario track, it is a completely different concept, and perhaps that's why it's a fit. The trailer actually revealed these 2 Wario courses back to back, and I doubt anyone thought twice about it. Maybe it was just the shot of Waluigi riding his motorcycle on the ship, but it looks so cool and the graphical upgrade was so insane that I was having struggles even recognizing it at first. This track was one of the sleeper hits of Mario Kart 7 in my opinion, and one I would consider to be among my top 3 new courses from that game. How they implement the new water sections and even the music variation in those sections will be interesting though, but as of right now, this is actually one of my 3 favorite additions to the retro selection. I'm really just a big fan of Wario tracks in general, and I'm excited to see this come back for the first time, and hey, maybe it coming here will just clear up more space for my ultimate prize next time. At least, until they choose Mount Wario instead. Funnily enough though, when I did my Remaking the Booster Pass video, I suggested that both Shipyard and Shy Guy Bazaar would be better fits than Rock Mountain and Rosalina's Ice World. But with that ship sailed, it's kind of funny to see them both here now, and I'm so ready for it. But also, it's just crazy to think that well over half of the Mario Kart 7 roster is returned now. Like, that game is supposed to still feel new. The game right after it hasn't even had a returning track yet. Unless, well, you want to count Sky High Sundae. Now, Sky High Sundae will be the last track I talk about today that's going to be making its debut as a retro course, and I guess it kind of goes to show how weird the whole situation is with Mario Kart 8. I mean, traditionally, courses from the last game are very well represented in the follow-up, but the last time a new Mario Kart came out, the previous one had only been on store shelves for just under 3 years, and this was actually just the way it used to be, and man, I kind of miss that era. I'd have so much more news to talk about if things were still like this. But since we are literally on year 11 of Mario Kart 8 now, there definitely appeared to be a vibe shift. Did anyone want to keep playing all of these courses that we've played since the beginning of that game? Well, probably not that much. It makes Sky High Sundae a rather sensible pick actually if you think about it. It's only been in Mario Kart 8 for just under 3 years, and in that sense, its timeline actually lines up with the quote priority retros of old. Now, I got a lot wrong in my track eligibility video last year since they broke that prior remake precedent. But one thing that I appear to be correct about was the types of tour courses that would likely be able to get in. It would of course be hard to see real-world cities placed in Mario Kart World's map. I mean, those places have actual locations. We know that London is not located in the Mario universe in real life, of course, so this left us with just a handful of options since there were only 7 tour original courses. Yoshi's Island was a favorite, but it's also, well, an island. Where do you put it on the map? Maybe as DLC? Likewise, Squeaky Clean Sprint and Piranha Plant Cove would have presented massive challenges making these new water mechanics work. I mean, the drain part of Squeaky Clean Sprint was at the bottom of a bathtub full of water, and we know now that we race on the water now, not underneath. And Piranha Plant Cove, well, it's hard to visualize that one in this engine. Really, that only leaves a handful of options. Now, I feel for the Piranha Plant Pipeline fans because many of them were of the idea that it was a shoo-in for this game, and now it is hard to feel certain about that. But Ninja Hideaway is of course there too. But I think what made Sky High Sundae make the most sense was the same reasons that Shy Guy Bazaar made a lot of sense. It's an icy track, and it's got an obviously cold climate, but its theme isn't just that it's a cold track. Its theme is ice cream. It's one of those courses that, well, is a cheat code when constructing cups like this for a game like this. It fits the Star Cup theme, but also stands out as its own course. This track really makes me reconsider how weird this game feels now if you've kind of been just like a traditional Mario Kart player. Because for any veteran, tracks are supposed to debut in the Star Cup, not return there as a retro track. Yet, it chose to make its debut in the Propeller Cup for some reason. But what perhaps makes this whole thing even more ironic is that the whole retro versus new track cup alignment thing is just so completely off the rails now that we don't have prefixes anymore. And it's funny because we looked back in the past thinking, how are they going to give Sky High Sundae a prefix? Because it's blatantly a tour track, and others are saying, well, yeah, but it made its debut in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And now we're just not going to get the answer, maybe ever. So the debate rages on, I guess. And perhaps it's just never going to be solved. And honestly, that's kind of funny. Now, there's one other tour original that I haven't discussed, and that was Merry Mountain. And perhaps it actually could have fit this cup too. But I do wonder if the Mario world can credibly claim the Christmas theme. I mean, maybe it can. Like, they had a Santa costume, I think, for Bowser and Tour. Maybe there was one in this game. I don't know. I'm kind of behind on the costumes. But I also think that they would have had to use it as a bit of a DK Pass replacement, and there'd still be like another track that they have to put in the Star Cup if they did that. So if all things considered, Sky High Sundae feels like the best fit because it can kind of act as a supplement to DK Pass as well. And we'll get to that course at the end, I promise. But I still need to give some thoughts on Sky High Sundae first. I really did not like it in Mario Kart 8. I thought it was among the worst in the game, and I felt kind of limited as a player in my options. The floaty physics made the driving feel boring in my opinion, but I am, well, much more hopeful in this version. It looks more like a standard track now, it uses the new rail mechanics, it looks kind of interesting in that way, and I think it's possible that losing the anti-gravity is possibly the best thing that could have happened to it. It's not that I think anti-gravity was just a bad mechanic, but I don't think it was really a fit for this course. And time will tell, but I am open to giving it another shot. So while it is truly weird that it's the only retro track that really originated in the last 13 years to be in this game, I will try not to be too upset about it and will remain open-minded because I think it's possible that it ends up being a redemption story as far as I'm concerned. But I guess we'll have to see. Now, here's the thing. Up to this point, I feel like I've been pretty positive. And that's cool because the last few days I've had some kind of like critical topics and all of that, and those aren't always like the most understood by the average person hopping on the channel for the first time, so I think it's good to, show some positivity and some love for some of these great tracks, but it's time to start questioning things again. Now, a lot of these tracks were just good selections that just made a ton of sense, but overall, across the whole board, the logic feels inconsistent. I don't think that Sky High Sundae being the only newish retro track was a coincidence at all. But if the justification is that we don't want to bring back any of the new courses from Mario Kart 8 so that were, there for a decade, why is it that Moo Moo Meadows is in this game? I mean, we know the real reason. We talked about it recently. There is a link between the characters and courses. And well, I know that if I attack the concept of the cow, that I'm going to have an army of pitchforks after me, even if the reality is one track slot is a way bigger deal than one character slot. But I get it, man. The cow was funny. But that said, had the cow not been in this game, would any of you even known to miss it? Like, if it was not revealed, it would still have been an unfathomable thought. I just think it's crazy. Nintendo really decided no base Mario Kart 8 courses at all costs. But yo, what if the cow from Moo Moo Meadows was playable. These guys really made up their own rule and decided to just break it immediately. And this is our new normal now. Everyone has seen the jukebox driving cow. There is no going back. You know, before the big avalanche of all these characters started, I feel like people would have thought a playable Thwomp was pretty funny too. We're probably just numb to the idea now after these last 2 weeks. Characters aside though, Thwomp Ruins would have likely been seen as a better addition than Moo Moo Meadows. Personally, I would easily trade the cow in Moo Moo Meadows for a playable Thwomp in Thwomp Ruins, and it would have made the track roster better to me by a decently sizable amount. It'd be another great first-time retro edition that would create better balance between the retro games that these courses are being pulled from. But well, now that we're in the funny cow timeline, I imagine most will disagree with me, and that's okay. I just rationalize that we usually only end up playing a few characters, but that we all have to play every track. For me, track selection will always just matter more for that reason, especially since character swaps don't actually change the gameplay all that much to begin with. I understand the decisions here, but ultimately, I'm going to judge the tracks in the game based on how enjoyable the set of tracks are disconnected from the character roster. Because part of the enjoyment I have playing these games stems from how fresh the set of tracks are. It's frankly hard to be excited about Moo Moo Meadows again, personally speaking. But what our reality indicates is that we can't really disconnect the characters from the tracks. To get rid of Moo Moo Meadows, it probably means getting rid of the cow. Well, at least unless they got more creative. Now, I mentioned earlier that one of my rules of thumb is that we can't just construct the hypothetical perfect Mario Kart track roster for any one game if we want future games to also feel special. But one of my other rules of thumb, and one that I will be holding myself to, is if I want to suggest a new course, I must pick one to remove as well. Likewise, if I want to remove a course from the game, a replacement needs to be stated too. So I have to ask, if they were really this insistent on the Moo Moo Cow, could they have really not just gone with Moo Moo Farm again, a track that we haven't seen in 20 years? I know the cow was not actually an obstacle on this track, but it was part of all the art, it was the theme, and I feel like they easily could have let it be an obstacle. It wouldn't have felt weird at all. But it is awkward for me to fully embrace this idea, because I really don't like Moo Moo Farm either, and I think it doesn't deserve a second remake as well. A matter of fact, I would still say that Moo Moo Meadows is the better track. It's just that we've been playing it actively for 14 of the last 17 years in the most recent Mario Kart release. But on the other hand, Choco Mountain is now getting its third remake. It too was in Mario Kart 8 and likely would be impacted if we were to swap out Meadows for Farm, since it is an N64 track too. But here's the difficulty in all of this. Choco Mountain has been completely revamped again, and looks to be a Charge and Chuck hideout now, which is another one of these character and course connections. So really, it feels like I have my hands tied here because the rules still feel a bit hidden. Choco Mountain getting a third remake is a series first in many ways. I know some of you guys are already at your keyboards getting ready to remind me that Mario Circuit 3 has gotten 4 now, but let's be realistic for a second. The Super Circuit remakes do not really count in the same way. None of those individual tracks were chosen as remakes, they were just all a collection. And what we're getting out of Mario Circuit 3 and World as well, just a lap. Choco Mountain, on the other hand, has gotten a full revamp 3 different times now, and that is crazy. I mean, it's a fine course, but it is still surprising to me. And honestly, I'm not hating. I looked at the revamp and it does feel like they justified its existence again with just how much they changed from even its Wave 1 form. But if it were up to me, I would probably not have selected it again. So I have a thought looming in my head. Would I give Choco Mountain and Moo Moo Meadows up for Thwomp Ruins and Moo Moo Farm? I'm genuinely not sure if I'd take the trade. We'd be receiving the worst course in the deal to me, but it'd be more fresh alongside a track that I think would be a more deserving candidate to get additional time in the spotlight, namely compared to Moo Moo Meadows. But I also don't have an answer because I realize that if it were up to me, I would just say put the cow, Thwomps, and Charge and Chucks in the game anyway, move Moo Moo Meadows to just being a cameo track on a map transition like a bunch of the SNES courses, and focus on bringing back a Wii U track instead that I would have included in all my praise earlier. But again, I'm doing this without the knowledge of how Kamek and all these course obstacles actually work, so maybe this idea will age poorly. I can't say I'm too pumped for all these courses though, but I imagine I will still kind of like Choco Mountain. Now, if you've followed this channel for a while, you probably realize I am a bit of a Mario Kart series historian. I love all the games, and part of the reason I care about these selections is because genuinely, I really like seeing all these old courses get their moment in the spotlight. There's just something cool to me about seeing new faces play the courses I grew up with, but at times, I've kind of felt that a lot of courses were just going to be forgotten to time. This is why I didn't really know how to feel when Yoshi Circuit got revealed for Mario Kart 8 initially, because while the idea of a bunch of courses returning multiple times can be exciting if your favorite track is selected a second time, I feel bad for the fans of the courses that feel, well, forgotten. And some of these courses are straight up good too. It's not like they're all bad and deserve to not really see the light of day again. I was always a big fan of Shroom Ridge, for instance. That's why the booster course reveal was really hype for me. But Mushroom City fans are still waiting, and often the sacrifice just doesn't feel justified for all these courses to come back 3 or 4 times. So when tracks do get second opportunities, typically I want my reaction to just be like, I mean, yeah, it's that track, of course it's back again. This is how I felt seeing stuff like Maple Treeway return to Mario Kart 8 and now with Airship Fortress in Mario Kart World. But look man, I'm not trying to be like a Peach Beach hater. It's pretty inoffensive, pleasant even, but like, when it comes to GameCube courses, why are we remaking one of the simplest tracks over Mushroom City? It's not like there are many traffic courses in this game and the idea, well, kinda makes sense for the Mario Kart World element in my opinion. I guess it overlaps too much in theme with Crown City, and maybe they were just insistent on that new idea seeing that it was in 2 different cups, but man, I feel like Mushroom City, like this would have been a great spot for it. But again, we all know why it was Peach Beach that was selected. The boys at Nintendo were probably like, guys, playable Cataquack, imagine. And I think I am reaching acceptance that we just live in the dumbest timeline. It is what it is. If they really needed a beach theme, I mean, Cheap Cheap Island was there, right off the shore, no GBA tracks up to this point. But hey, playable Cataquack, sure, I get it, man. But perhaps a bigger what the heck is going on moment than this is just Desert Hills. And look, I'm not like a Pokey hater or anything, but this is the one that I just can't really get excited about, man. There's not even like a goofy character that I feel like I might use to like just troll online and stuff. And like, I know it's better than something like Figure 8 Circuit, and I'm not trying to insult it in a comparison, but if we're just going to sign off on remaking Desert Hills twice, you might as well have just signed off on bringing back Figure 8 Circuit instead, because even if it's a downgrade over Desert Hills, since, well, Figure 8 Circuit is practically always a downgrade, at least we can just have a weaker track and say it's done. Desert Hills, again, just feels like having a weaker track, but the catch is that there's just no reason for doing it. It's just like an extra L that we have to take. I'm actually genuinely shocked it's here. Like, we know Cataquack has insane meme potential, right? But I can't see Desert Hills providing back to the game in that same kind of way. I don't know why something like Yoshi Desert wasn't considered instead. That track is another lost Super Circuit track that hardly anyone has played, but I would not only argue that it is more distinct and personable than Desert Hills, but that it's actually just a better fit with all things considered. To my knowledge, there's no other Yoshi track revealed. There are 2 other DS tracks on the roster already and no other Game & Story returning courses, all while there's no GBA track at all. And unlike the Wii U tracks, I don't know why they'd be limiting the GBA courses to start. Yes, the track doesn't have Pokies or Conch Doors, but it does have Piranha Plants, and Conch Doors weren't even on the original Desert Hills either. Like, you can just add Pokies and Conch Doors to Yoshi Desert. It would not be that weird. A matter of fact, in Yoshi's debut game, he was eating up Pokies on the title screen. If you really want to make Pokey playable, one that only has like 3 parts is the way to go. And to be honest, the ones that have 3 parts are ones that are likely to have been messed with by Yoshi. Like, I don't know, I'm rambling here, but it kind of makes sense, right? Furthermore, Desert Hills' most distinct feature is perhaps the Oasis, and Yoshi Desert even has 2 of them, with one acting as a shortcut. Now, because of all the connections to the character roster that these tracks have, it is hard to really make any actual modification suggestions to this track list. I don't think that Peach Beach and Moo Moo Meadows are good courses to have on the roster, but there aren't really any easy answers to removing them when it comes to the cost of what, the characters in Mario Kart World are. But I don't really have any easy answers to justify removing them when it comes to the character roster that we've been given. But Desert Hills is where I think I'd step in and say make the change. There are characters on the roster that you could add to it. There's no reason why Yoshi Desert couldn't be a better selection and makes the game feel more complete in my opinion. And to the Desert Hills fans, I'm sorry, but if it is a little bit of a consolation prize, Desert Hills is actually my dad's favorite track, so even if a bunch of people agree with me, you're not alone in being a fan. He won a race of it on Mario Kart Wii Online once, and that's the only track he's ever won on. He embraced it for its simplicity. He always loved it, he still even remembers it all these years later. And hey, your track is in the game and not my suggestion, so who really gets the last laugh? Since we are locked into this timeline, I suppose I should be part of the whole character problem. Nintendo, where is Angry Sun as a playable character? But anyway, I feel like that's about it. Dino Dino Jungle and DK Pass are both courses I enjoy. They're the last ones I haven't talked about, at least as far as the courses that I believe are in Grand Prix mode. And these two tracks I considered actually to be right behind my big three of Music Park, Waluigi Pinball, and Airship Fortress back in Mario Kart 7. I've already got to play them plenty in that era, but I'm certainly not sad to see them return by any means. It is weird to see Dino Dino Jungle back again, considering that all the other tracks from its original cup still have yet to make an appearance in the last 20 years, but given the theme of this game, none of those courses would have really been fits due to other similar tracks just being priorities. The new changes with like the lab and everything look quite interesting still, and really it just looks amazing. And to be honest, while I enjoyed the glider cut on Mario Kart 7, I'm excited to probably actually experience the final turn again, believe it or not, and this is just a good course in my opinion. It was actually the one that I wanted to see in the Booster Pass over DK Mountain, but perhaps this timeline worked out better for me. But again, I have to ask, are we getting the playable Dino or not? I'm a bit more surprised to see DK Pass again though. It has actually always been my favorite DK track in the series, believe it or not, and I feel like that's a pretty uncommon opinion and that many have actually really disliked this course before. That said, I think it looks really good as well here. It looks like they removed the hill with the secret broken item box, so I wonder if the special box is just gone entirely. I always felt that that was an accident because the only time a CPU player ever used that box was in the backwards race mission where the item distribution was mostly all stars and triple mushrooms, and perhaps they just forgot to modify its properties or something, but it was cool to see them leave it that way back in Mario Kart 7. We'll never know if it was originally deliberate, I guess, but it's something that's kind of fun to speculate about since they did double down. Like, they might have just done it for fun, based on what the reputation became, but with the change in world, I guess we'll truly never know. Technically, they could have gone with Frappe Snowland or Frappe Snowland, if that's how you pronounce it. Let me know on that, I guess. I'm still confused on that one. But that's a course that would have still made sense if they wanted the playable snowman, or to reduce the DS track total, or have a different N64 option than Choco Mountain again. But personally, I think I prefer how we got it, because I like DK Pass more, so I'm cool with it all. All in all, though, based on what we've seen up to this point, I think I would give this retro course selection a grade of a flat B. There's a lot of good here. It contains 4 of my 7 favorite tracks from Mario Kart 7, and the other 3 were retro tracks and deluxe I've played plenty recently. And while I am not as high on Wii courses in general as everyone else, it grabbed my personal favorite new course from that game. It finally completes our first game as well to have every track return, and did justice to the final track that it's really waited for years. And while I am a little disappointed with no GBA or Wii U tracks returning, perhaps in favor of a lot of questionable second-time retro selections, it is of course possible that this opinion rises in the future too, whether that be due to them adding more courses, or perhaps just the gameplay exceeding my expectations when I do get my hands on it. But up to this point, this is how I see it all. So what do you guys think? Did they bring back any favorites of yours? Let me know all about it in the comments, or maybe just discuss how much they really need to reveal a playable Angry Sun on Thursday. But thanks for listening today. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed today's talk. And I'll see you all again soon, whether that be with the direct reactions or the long-awaited acronym discussion. Until next time, have a good one, guys.